The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters in Coronado, California. Captain Marcus Rodriguez had seen many sunrises during his 23 years of service, but something about this particular Tuesday felt different. The weight of his recent promotion still felt foreign on his shoulders, the silver eagles on his uniform catching the light as he walked through the corridors he had once traversed as a young enlisted sailor. The communications center buzzed with its usual activity. Banks of sophisticated radio equipment lined the walls, their digital displays flickering with coded messages from teams deployed across the globe. It was here that the lifeline between home and the battlefield was maintained, where critical intelligence flowed like water through carefully constructed channels. The room hummed with the quiet efficiency that came from years of practice and the understanding that every transmission could mean the difference between life and death for someone thousands of miles away. Marcus paused at the entrance, watching the specialists at work. Most were young men, their fingers dancing across keyboards and adjusting frequency dials with practiced precision. But his attention was drawn to a figure hunched over a particularly complex radio setup in the far corner. The person wore standard military fatigues, but something in their posture suggested a different kind of focus, a more intimate relationship with the equipment. As he approached, he realized it was a woman. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her hands moved with the confidence of someone who understood not just how to operate the equipment, but how it truly worked. She was completely absorbed in her task, oblivious to the world around her as she fine-tuned frequencies and adjusted signal parameters. "Excuse me," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle her. The woman looked up, and Marcus was struck by her eyes. They were deep brown, almost black, and held an intensity that reminded him of his own reflection during the most challenging moments of his career. She couldn't have been more than 25, but there was something in her expression that suggested she had seen more than her share of responsibility. "Sir," she said, starting to stand. "Please, continue what you're doing," Marcus said, raising a hand. "I'm just making my rounds. I'm Captain Rodriguez, the new CO. Petty Officer Second Class Elena Vasquez, sir," she replied, her voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus couldn't quite place. "I was just working on the backup communication array for Team 7. They're having some interference issues in their current location." Marcus nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what that entailed. His background was in direct action and tactical operations, not communications. "Is it serious?" Elena's expression grew more focused. "It could be, sir. When you're operating in hostile territory, reliable communication isn't just important for mission coordination. It's often the only way home." The weight of her words settled over Marcus like a familiar blanket. He had been on the other end of those communications countless times, crouched in some foreign landscape, waiting for confirmation that extraction was coming or that the mission parameters had changed. The voice on the radio was often anonymous, just another cog in the military machine, but it represented something vital, the connection to safety, to support, to hope. "How long have you been working communications?" Marcus asked. "4 years, sir. Started right out of technical school." Elena's fingers never stopped moving as she spoke, adjusting settings with an almost musical rhythm. "My father was a radio operator in the Marines during Desert Storm. He always said that the person on the radio might be the last friendly voice someone hears, so you better make sure they hear it clearly." Marcus felt something stir in his chest, a recognition of the dedication that went beyond mere duty. He had met many soldiers, sailors, and Marines who simply did their jobs well. But occasionally, he encountered someone who understood that their work was part of something larger, something sacred in its own way. "Your father sounds like a wise man," Marcus said. "He was," Elena replied, and Marcus caught the past tense. "He always told me that everyone serves differently, but service is service. Whether you're kicking down doors or making sure the door kickers can call for backup." As if summoned by their conversation, the radio crackled to life. A voice, distant and slightly distorted, came through the speakers. "Base, this is Eagle 7. Do you copy?" Elena immediately leaned forward, her hand moving to the microphone. "Eagle 7, this is Base. I copy you 5 by 5. Go ahead." Base, we need an immediate relay to command. We have eyes on the target, but we're seeing unexpected movement in the area. Request guidance on whether to proceed or abort. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He recognized the code words, understood that somewhere in a dangerous place, a team of his people was asking for direction that could determine whether they completed their mission or came home alive. The decision would ultimately be made by officers far above his pay grade, but it would be Elena who carried that decision across the airwaves. Eagle 7, stand by for relay, Elena said, her voice steady and professional. She immediately began typing on another console, establishing a secure connection to the command structure. Marcus watched as she juggled multiple communication streams, her attention split between the team in the field and the officers who would make the critical decisions. Within minutes, she had coordinated a three-way communication that allowed the team leader to speak directly with the mission commander. Marcus listened as tactical details were discussed, risk assessments were made, and ultimately, the decision was reached to proceed with modified parameters. Eagle 7, you are go for modified approach. Be advised, extraction window moves up 30 minutes. Confirm copy. Base, Eagle 7 copies. Modified approach, extraction window plus 30. We are moving. Roger, Eagle 7. Base out. Elena set down the microphone and immediately began adjusting the radio settings again. They'll need crystal clear communication for the next 2 hours, she explained to Marcus without looking up. Even the smallest interference could compromise their position. Marcus stood there for a moment, watching her work. He had commanded men and women in combat, had made split-second decisions that affected lives, had carried the weight of leadership in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. But there was something humbling about watching Elena coordinate life and death communications with such calm professionalism. Petty Officer Vasquez, he said finally. Yes, sir? Carry on. As Marcus walked away, he found himself thinking about the nature of heroism. The public image of special operations was all about the dramatic moments, the high-speed chases, the precise application of violence against those who threatened innocent people. Movies and books focused on the operators who carried the weapons and faced the enemy directly. But Marcus had been in the military long enough to understand that heroism took many forms. The supply officer who ensured that ammunition and medical supplies reached the teams when they needed them. The intelligence analyst who spent 16 hours a day poring over satellite images to find the one detail that would keep people alive. The mechanics who worked through the night to ensure that helicopters and vehicles would function flawlessly when lives depended on them. And the radio operators who served as the invisible thread connecting warriors to their lifeline home. Over the following days, Marcus found himself returning to the communications center more frequently than his duties strictly required. He told himself it was important to understand all aspects of his command, to know the people and processes that supported his teams in the field. But, if he was honest, he was fascinated by Elena's quiet competence and the way she seemed to understand the weight of her responsibilities. He learned that she had grown up in a small town in New Mexico, the daughter of a Marine veteran and a school teacher. Her father had been killed in a car accident during her senior year of high school, and she had enlisted partly to honor his memory and partly because she needed direction in her life. The military had given her both purpose and family, and she had found her calling in the world of military communications. Elena worked long shifts, often staying past her required hours to ensure that equipment was properly maintained and that incoming communications were handled smoothly. Marcus noticed that other personnel in the center seemed to gravitate toward her when they had technical problems or needed advice on complex communication scenarios. She's got a gift for it, Senior Chief Petty Officer Williams told Marcus one afternoon. Williams was a 20-year veteran who ran the communications center with the efficiency of a Swiss watch. Some people learn to operate the equipment. Vasquez understands it on a different level. It's like she can hear things in the static that the rest of us miss. Marcus was intrigued by this assessment. What do you mean? Williams scratched his graying beard thoughtfully. Last month, we had a team that went dark during an operation. Standard procedure is to wait for scheduled check-in times and try to re-establish contact according to protocol. But Vasquez kept monitoring their frequency, even though officially they were supposed to be radio silent. He paused, looking toward Elena's station. 3 hours after they missed their check-in, she picked up what sounded like random atmospheric interference. Most people would have dismissed it as background noise. But she recognized a pattern, realized someone was keying their radio in a specific sequence. Turned out the team leader had been injured and couldn't speak, but he was trying to signal their position using Morse code. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Did they get them out? Recovery team reached them 40 minutes before they would have been overrun by hostiles. The team leader spent 3 weeks in the hospital, but he's back on active duty now. Williams looked directly at Marcus. He stops by here sometimes, just to thank her. Says she saved his life. That evening, Marcus found himself staying late in his office, working on routine administrative tasks that could have waited. He told himself he was just being thorough, but he knew he was really waiting for the night shift to begin. Elena often worked nights, when many of the overseas operations were active due to time zone differences. When he finally made his way to the communications center, he found Elena at her usual station, but tonight she looked different. Her professional composure was still in place, but Marcus could see tension in the set of her shoulders, a tightness around her eyes that suggested she was dealing with more than routine communication traffic. "Everything all right, petty officer?" he asked. Elena looked up, and Marcus saw something in her expression that he recognized from his own experience in combat situations. It was the look of someone carrying information they wished they didn't have to bear. "We have a team that's been out of contact for 6 hours, sir," she said quietly. "Team 12, operating in Afghanistan. They were supposed to check in every 2 hours during their mission, but we haven't heard anything since they confirmed insertion." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Team 12 was one of his units, 8 highly trained operators who were conducting a reconnaissance mission in a particularly dangerous region. The fact that they had gone silent could mean anything from equipment failure to complete mission compromise. "What's being done?" he asked. "Standard protocol, sir. Command has been notified, and there's a quick reaction force standing by. But until we know more about what happened, they can't risk sending in a recovery team." Elena's hands never stopped moving as she spoke, continuously adjusting frequencies and monitoring different channels. Marcus realized she was systematically checking every possible communication method the team might use, trying to find any signal that might indicate their status. "Is there anything I can do?" Marcus asked. For the first time since he had met her, Elena hesitated. "Sir, I know this isn't standard procedure, but sometimes teams will try to communicate using emergency frequencies or even civilian radio bands if their primary equipment is compromised. I'd like to expand my search beyond the normal military channels." Marcus understood immediately. She was asking for permission to break protocol, to use equipment and frequencies that were normally restricted. If her actions were discovered by the wrong people, it could result in disciplinary action or worse. But Marcus also understood that sometimes the book had to be set aside in favor of doing what was right. "Petty Officer Vasquez," he said formally, "you have my authorization to use whatever resources you deem necessary to attempt communication with Team 12. Elena's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "Thank you, sir." What followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed. Elena became a conductor orchestrating an invisible symphony, her hands moving between different pieces of equipment as she systematically searched through frequencies and communication methods that most people didn't even know existed. She monitored emergency bands, civilian radio channels, even satellite phone networks. Hours passed. Other personnel came and went, but Elena remained focused on her task. Marcus found himself unable to leave, drawn to watch this demonstration of dedication that went far beyond duty or obligation. Then, at 3:17 in the morning, Elena suddenly straightened. "There," she whispered, her hand freezing over a frequency dial. "Do you hear that?" Marcus listened but heard only static. Elena made minute adjustments to the signal, and, gradually, Marcus began to make out what sounded like a very faint voice buried in the background noise. Team 12, this is base. Do you copy?" The response was barely audible, broken up by interference and distance, but it was unmistakably human. Base, this is Team 12, we copy. What Elena learned over the next 30 minutes would later be classified, but Marcus was authorized to know that Team 12 had encountered unexpected enemy forces and had been forced to take shelter in a location that severely limited their communication capabilities. They had been trying to signal for hours using a damaged radio that could barely transmit. Without Elena's unconventional approach to communication, they might not have been found until it was too late. As dawn broke over Coronado, Marcus watched Elena coordinate the complex communication requirements for Team 12's extraction. She had been awake for over 18 hours, but her focus never wavered. Her voice remained calm and professional as she guided rescue aircraft to the team's location and maintained contact until every member was safely aboard the extraction helicopters. When it was over, Elena finally allowed herself to slump slightly in her chair. The communications center had emptied except for the two of them, and the morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting everything in a golden glow. "Hell of a night," Marcus said quietly. Elena nodded, exhaustion finally showing in her features. "They're all coming home, sir. That's what matters." Marcus looked at this young woman who had just spent the night performing what could only be described as a minor miracle. She had taken risks, broken protocol, and displayed a level of technical skill and intuitive understanding that went far beyond her rank or experience level. And she had done it all not for recognition or advancement, but simply because it was the right thing to do. "Petty Officer Vasquez," Marcus said. "Yes, sir?" "Outstanding work." Elena smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression Marcus had seen from her. "Just doing my job, sir." But, as Marcus walked back to his office, he knew he had witnessed something more than someone just doing their job. He had seen dedication, skill, and courage that deserved to be recognized. Elena Vasquez represented the best of what military service could be: selfless, competent, and committed to something larger than herself. The question now was what he was going to do about it. The weeks following the Team 12 incident brought a subtle shift to the communications center. Word had spread quietly through the command about Elena's exceptional work that night, and Marcus noticed that other officers had begun paying closer attention to the young petty officer. Senior Chief Williams had submitted a formal commendation, and there was talk of Elena being selected for advanced technical training. But Marcus also noticed something else. Elena seemed uncomfortable with the attention. She continued her work with the same quiet professionalism, but there was a tension in her demeanor that hadn't been there before. She avoided eye contact when officers visited the communications center, and she had begun working different shifts to minimize interactions with personnel outside her immediate work group. It was Master Chief Anderson who finally provided insight into Elena's behavior. Anderson was a 30-year veteran who had served as Marcus's senior enlisted advisor since his promotion to captain. He had an uncanny ability to read people and situations, a skill that had made him invaluable throughout his career. "She's scared, sir," Anderson said during one of their weekly meetings. "Word is getting around about what she did, and she's worried it's going to change things for her." Marcus looked up from the reports he had been reviewing. "Change things how?" "Captain, you have to understand Elena's background. She didn't come from a military family in the traditional sense. Her father served, but he never talked much about his service. She enlisted because she needed direction, not because she grew up wanting to be a hero. She found her place in communications because it allowed her to contribute without being in the spotlight." Anderson leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. "Now suddenly, everyone's talking about her. Officers are asking about her work, and there's speculation about promotion and special assignments. For someone who just wants to do their job well and go home at the end of the day, that kind of attention can feel overwhelming." Marcus had seen this before. Military culture often struggled with how to handle individuals who performed exceptional service without seeking recognition. The system was designed to reward achievement with advancement and visibility, but not everyone wanted or was comfortable with that trajectory. "What do you recommend?" Marcus asked. "Give her some space, but don't ignore what she did. Find a way to recognize her contribution without making it feel like her whole world is changing. That evening, Marcus made his way to the communications center. Elena was working her usual night shift, monitoring communications for several teams that were active in different time zones. The center was quieter than during the day, with only a skeleton crew handling the overnight traffic. Marcus approached Elena's station, but, instead of interrupting her work, he simply pulled up a chair and sat down nearby. Elena glanced at him nervously but continued her tasks. "Mind if I ask you something, petty officer?" Marcus said after a few minutes. "Of course, sir. What made you choose communications as your specialty?" Elena's hands paused momentarily over her equipment. "Honestly, sir? It wasn't my first choice. I originally wanted to be a hospital corpsman. I thought I wanted to save lives directly, help people in immediate crisis." She adjusted a frequency dial before continuing. "But, during technical school, I discovered that I had an aptitude for radio operations. My instructors said I had a natural ear for signal recognition and an intuitive understanding of how radio waves behave in different environments." Marcus nodded. "But, that's not the whole story, is it?" Elena smiled slightly, the first genuine expression of warmth Marcus had seen from her in weeks. "No, sir. The truth is, I realized that communications was where I could make the biggest difference. A corpsman can save the life of one person at a time. But, a radio operator can be the lifeline for entire teams, the connection that brings everyone home safely." "Like your father said," Marcus observed. "Exactly like my father said." Elena's voice grew softer. "He used to tell me that every job in the military is important, but some jobs are about being the invisible support that allows others to shine. He said there was honor in being the person no one notices when things go right, but everyone depends on when things go wrong." Marcus felt a deep respect for Elena's father, a man he had never met but whose wisdom had clearly shaped his daughter's approach to service. It explained why Elena was uncomfortable with the recent attention, why recognition felt contrary to her understanding of her role. "Your father sounds like he understood military service on a fundamental level," Marcus said. "He did. But, sir, can I be honest with you about something?" "Of course." Elena took a deep breath. "I'm worried that all this talk about commendations and special assignments is going to take me away from what I'm good at. I don't want to be promoted into management or sent to some advanced school that teaches me to train other people. I want to stay here, doing this job, being the person who makes sure the communications work when they need to work." Marcus had suspected this was Elena's concern, but hearing it confirmed helped him understand the delicate balance he needed to strike. The military system was designed to advance talented individuals, but advancement often meant moving away from the hands-on work that had made them valuable in the first place. "Elena," he said, using her first name for the first time, "what if I told you that there might be ways to recognize your exceptional abilities without taking you away from the work you love?" She looked at him with cautious interest. "How do you mean, sir?" "The Navy is always looking for subject matter experts, people who can serve as consultants and trainers while still maintaining their primary duties. Someone with your skills and understanding could help improve communication procedures across special operations units without leaving the communications center." Marcus could see Elena considering this possibility. "That would mean other people would expect me to have answers, to be some kind of expert." "You already are an expert," Marcus said gently. "The question is whether you're willing to share that expertise to help others provide the same level of support you provide." Before Elena could respond, the radio crackled with an incoming transmission. "Base, this is Falcon 2. We have a situation." Elena immediately shifted into professional mode, her personal concerns set aside as she focused on the task at hand. "Falcon 2, this is Base. Go ahead with your situation." "Base, we have a team member who's been injured during insertion. We need immediate medical consultation and guidance on field treatment options." Marcus watched as Elena smoothly coordinated a complex communication scenario. Within minutes, she had established connections between the team and the field, a military doctor at a forward operating base, and a trauma surgeon at a major military hospital. She managed the technical aspects of the communication while also serving as a relay for medical information that was beyond her expertise. The injured team member had suffered a compound fracture and significant blood loss during a helicopter insertion. The team's medic was skilled, but the injury was beyond his ability to treat effectively in a field environment. The decision had to be made whether to attempt an immediate extraction or to provide advanced field treatment that might stabilize the patient for a longer evacuation timeline. Elena coordinated a three-way medical consultation that lasted 45 minutes. She managed multiple communication channels simultaneously, ensuring that the doctors could examine digital images of the injury sent from the field, that vital signs and treatment information could be transmitted in real time, and that the team leader could participate in discussions about tactical considerations for evacuation. Throughout the entire process, Elena never once offered medical advice or tried to influence the decisions being made. But her management of the communication allowed the doctors to provide care almost as if they were physically present with the injured team member. When the consultation concluded with the decision to perform advanced field treatment followed by evacuation to a forward operating base, Elena coordinated the communication requirements for the medical evacuation aircraft and ensured that the receiving medical facility had all the information they needed to prepare for the patient's arrival. As the various communication channels closed down, Marcus realized he had witnessed something remarkable. Elena had served as more than just a radio operator. She had been the central nervous system of a life-saving operation that involved multiple teams, medical experts, and aircraft across several time zones. That, Marcus said quietly, is exactly what I mean about being an expert. Elena looked exhausted but satisfied. The medic did all the hard work, sir. I just made sure everyone could talk to each other. Elena, you coordinated a virtual medical consultation that probably saved that team member's life. You managed communication protocols I didn't even know existed. You did all of this while maintaining operational security and ensuring that other teams weren't affected by the additional communication traffic. Marcus paused, looking at the banks of equipment around them. Most people could learn to operate this gear. Some people could even become proficient at it. But what you just did requires an understanding of not just the technology, but of how people think and work under pressure. It requires an intuitive grasp of how to prioritize competing demands and how to facilitate communication without getting in the way of the actual work being done. Elena was quiet for a moment, and Marcus could see her processing what he had said. Sir, if I were to consider taking on additional responsibilities, how would that work exactly? Marcus felt a surge of hope. It would start small. Maybe reviewing communication protocols for specific types of operations, identifying ways to improve efficiency or reliability. Eventually, it might involve training other operators or serving as a consultant when teams are planning complex operations. And I would still be here, still doing this job? This would always be your primary responsibility, Marcus assured her. Everything else would be secondary to maintaining communication support for active operations. Elena nodded slowly. I'd want to think about it, sir. Of course. Take all the time you need. Over the following days, Marcus noticed Elena seemed more relaxed. She still worked with the same intense focus, but the tension that had marked her behavior since the Team 12 incident began to fade. She started engaging more with her colleagues and even offered suggestions during shift briefings about ways to improve their operational procedures. It was during this period that Marcus learned more about Elena's personal life. She lived in a small apartment near the base, sharing the space with another petty officer from the intelligence section. She spent her free time reading technical manuals and practicing with different types of radio equipment, often building her own modifications to improve performance. She's got a workshop set up in her garage, Senior Chief Williams told Marcus. Spends her weekends working on communication gear like other people work on cars. I've seen some of her modifications, and they're better than what the manufacturers provide. This information reinforced Marcus's growing conviction that Elena represented a unique resource for his command. Her combination of technical expertise, intuitive understanding of communication dynamics, and commitment to excellence made her exactly the kind of person the military needed to retain and develop. But Marcus also recognized that Elena's value went beyond her technical abilities. She represented something important about military service itself, the understanding that excellence came not from seeking recognition, but from dedication to mission and people. It was this realization that led Marcus to make a decision that would surprise many people, including Elena herself. He began researching precedents for recognizing exceptional service members in ways that honored their contributions without disrupting their preferred roles. He spoke with other commanders, reviewed personnel policies, and consulted with senior enlisted advisors about creative approaches to career development. What he discovered was that the military system, while often rigid, did have mechanisms for recognizing and utilizing exceptional talent in non-traditional ways. There were programs for technical consultants, subject matter expert positions, and specialized roles that allowed individuals to remain in their areas of expertise while taking on additional responsibilities. But Marcus also learned something else. Truly meaningful recognition often came not from formal programs or official positions, but from the respect and acknowledgement of peers and superiors who understood the value of exceptional service. This understanding would soon lead to an event that would change not only Elena's life, but also provide a powerful lesson about the nature of honor, service, and recognition in the military community. The opportunity arose during a visit from Admiral Thompson, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Command. Admiral Thompson was making his quarterly visit to review operations and meet with key personnel. These visits typically involved formal briefings, equipment demonstrations, and meetings with senior staff. Marcus had planned the agenda carefully, ensuring that the admiral would see examples of the exceptional work being done at all levels of the command. But, as the visit approached, he realized that Elena's story needed to be told, and that Admiral Thompson needed to understand the kind of person who was serving under his command. The question was how to do this in a way that honored Elena's preferences while still ensuring that her contributions were properly recognized. Marcus decided to take a calculated risk. Instead of including Elena in formal briefings or ceremonies, he would arrange for Admiral Thompson to observe the communications center during actual operations. The admiral would see Elena at work, performing the duties she excelled at, without the artificial context of a formal presentation. What Marcus couldn't have anticipated was how this simple observation would lead to a moment that would be talked about throughout the special operations community for years to come. The stage was set for an encounter that would demonstrate the true meaning of honor, respect, and recognition in military service. Admiral Thompson's visit began like most high-level military inspections, precisely scheduled, carefully orchestrated, and designed to showcase the command's capabilities and readiness. Marcus had coordinated with his staff to ensure that each aspect of the tour would demonstrate the professionalism and excellence that define naval special warfare operations. The admiral was exactly what Marcus had expected from his reputation, a tall, imposing figure with silver hair and eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of his surroundings. Thompson had earned his position through 35 years of distinguished service, including multiple combat deployments and command positions that had tested his abilities under the most challenging circumstances. As they moved through the facility, Thompson asked pointed questions about operational procedures, equipment capabilities, and personnel development. Marcus was impressed by the admiral's depth of knowledge and his genuine interest in understanding not just what his command could do, but how it accomplished its missions. The tour of the communications center was scheduled for late afternoon, during the shift change that would allow Thompson to see both the day and night operations crews. Marcus had deliberately timed this visit to coincide with Elena's shift, hoping that the admiral would have an opportunity to observe her work. As they entered the communications center, Marcus felt a familiar sense of pride in the facility and the people who worked there. The room hummed with quiet efficiency, banks of sophisticated equipment operated by personnel who understood that their work was the invisible backbone of operations around the world. Senior Chief Williams greeted the admiral and began explaining the center's capabilities and operational procedures. Thompson listened attentively, asking technical questions that demonstrated his own background in communications and intelligence operations. Elena was at her usual station in the far corner of the room, focused on her work and apparently unaware of the admiral's presence. Marcus noticed that she was managing multiple communication streams, her hands moving between different pieces of equipment as she coordinated transmissions for several teams operating in different theaters. "Admiral," Marcus said, "I'd like you to meet one of our most capable communications specialists." As they approached Elena's station, Marcus could see her become aware of their presence. She looked up, and Marcus saw a moment of recognition flash across her features as she realized she was looking at the silver stars of a flag officer. "Petty Officer Second Class Elena Vasquez," Marcus said, "this is Admiral Thompson, our commanding officer." Elena immediately began to stand, but Thompson gestured for her to remain seated. "Please, continue your work," the Admiral said. "Don't let us interrupt you." What happened next would later be the subject of discussions throughout the special operations community, though the details would be known only to those present. Elena's radio crackled with an incoming transmission that was clearly marked as priority traffic. She immediately focused on her equipment, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she established contact with what Marcus realized was a team in an active combat zone. "Base, this is Phoenix 1. We have troops in contact and need immediate fire support coordination." Elena's demeanor shifted instantly to one of intense concentration. "Phoenix 1, this is Base. I copy, troops in contact. Stand by for fire support coordination." What followed was a masterclass in communication management under pressure. Elena simultaneously coordinated with the team under fire, established contact with supporting artillery units, connected with air support assets, and maintained communication with command elements who were making tactical decisions in real time. Admiral Thompson and Marcus found themselves witnessing a complex military operation being coordinated through the skill and expertise of a single communications operator. Elena's voice remained calm and professional as she managed multiple radio channels, ensuring that information flowed smoothly between ground units, supporting fires, and command authority. The operation lasted 18 minutes. During that time, Elena coordinated artillery strikes that suppressed enemy positions, guided close air support aircraft to their targets, and maintained constant communication with the ground team as they maneuvered out of the danger area. Throughout the entire engagement, Elena never once looked away from her equipment or acknowledged the presence of the Admiral and Marcus. Her entire focus was directed toward ensuring that the team in combat had the support they needed to complete their mission and return safely. When the last transmission confirmed that Phoenix 1 was clear of the combat area and proceeding to their extraction point, Elena finally leaned back in her chair. Only then did she seem to remember that she was being observed by senior officers. "Sorry about that, sir," she said to Admiral Thompson. "We had a team that needed immediate support." Thompson was quiet for a long moment, his eyes studying Elena's station and the equipment she had been using. Marcus could see the Admiral processing what he had just witnessed, understanding the complexity and skill required to manage such a dynamic situation. "Petty Officer Vasquez," Thompson said finally, "how long have you been doing this work?" "For years, sir," Elena replied. "And you coordinated all of that by yourself?" Elena looked confused by the question. "Yes, sir. It's part of the standard communication support mission." Thompson looked at Marcus, and something passed between them that Marcus would later recognize as a moment of mutual understanding about what they had just observed. "Captain Rodriguez," Thompson said, "could I speak with you privately for a moment?" As they stepped away from Elena's station, Thompson's expression was thoughtful. "That was not standard communication support," he said quietly. "No, sir, it wasn't," Marcus agreed. "That petty officer just coordinated a complex fire support mission involving multiple assets and command authorities. She managed communication for an operation that, in some units, would require multiple officers and a full coordination center." Thompson paused, looking back toward Elena, who had returned to her routine monitoring duties. "What else can you tell me about her?" Marcus provided a brief summary of Elena's background, her exceptional performance during the Team 12 incident, and her reluctant attitude toward recognition and advancement. He explained Elena's preference for remaining in her current role and her father's influence on her understanding of military service. "She represents something important, Admiral," Marcus concluded. "She's an example of what happens when exceptional natural ability meets genuine dedication to mission and people." Thompson nodded slowly. "Captain, I've been in this business for over 3 decades. I've seen a lot of talented people, and I've learned to recognize the difference between someone who performs well under normal circumstances and someone who excels when it really matters." The admiral looked around the communications center, taking in the sophisticated equipment and the personnel who operated it. What that young woman just did required not just technical expertise, but an intuitive understanding of how complex operations work. She had to think 3 steps ahead, anticipate what information different units would need, and coordinate multiple moving parts without losing sight of the bigger picture. "Yes, sir," Marcus said. And she did it all while remaining essentially invisible to the units she was supporting. They knew they had reliable communication and coordination, but they probably never thought about who was making that possible. Thompson was quiet for another moment. "You know, Captain, in all my years of service, I've learned that the military's greatest strength lies not in our technology or our tactics, but in the individual men and women who understand that their personal excellence directly impacts the safety and success of their fellow service members." The admiral gestured toward Elena. "That petty officer embodies that principle. She's not doing exceptional work for recognition or advancement. She's doing it because she understands that lives depend on her competence." Marcus felt a deep sense of validation for his assessment of Elena's value to the command. But he also sensed that Admiral Thompson was building towards something more significant than mere acknowledgement. "Sir, what are you thinking?" Thompson smiled, and Marcus saw something in the admiral's expression that reminded him why this man had earned the respect and loyalty of everyone who served under him. "Captain, I'm thinking that there are times when the traditional military approach to recognition and advancement doesn't adequately address what we've just witnessed. Sometimes, the most meaningful recognition comes not from formal ceremonies or official documents, but from genuine acknowledgement of exceptional service by those who understand its value." As they returned to Elena's station, Marcus noticed that other personnel in the communications center had begun to pay attention to the admiral's extended presence. It was unusual for a flag officer to spend so much time observing a single operator, and the subtle shift in atmosphere suggested that people sensed something significant was happening. Elena was back to her routine monitoring duties, but Marcus could see that she was aware of the continued attention. Her posture suggested someone who was trying to focus on her work while simultaneously wondering why senior officers were spending so much time watching her perform routine tasks. "Petty Officer Vasquez," Admiral Thompson said, approaching her station again. "Yes, sir? I want you to know that what I just witnessed was extraordinary. The skill, professionalism, and composure you demonstrated during that fire support coordination represents the very best of what military service should be." Elena's cheeks reddened slightly. "Thank you, sir, but I was just doing my job." "No," Thompson said firmly. "What you just did went far beyond just doing your job. You provided life-saving support to your fellow service members under pressure, with skill that comes only from exceptional training, natural ability, and genuine dedication to excellence." The admiral paused, and Marcus could see that he was choosing his words carefully. "Petty Officer Vasquez, in my experience, there are 2 types of military personnel. There are those who serve competently and professionally, meeting the standards expected of them and contributing to the mission in important ways. And then, there are those who serve with a level of excellence that elevates everyone around them and makes missions successful that might otherwise fail." Thompson looked directly at Elena. "You, Petty Officer, are clearly in the second category." Elena seemed at a loss for words. Marcus could see that she was genuinely moved by the admiral's recognition, but also clearly uncomfortable with being singled out for praise. "Sir," she said finally, "I appreciate your words, but I'm just one member of a team. The communications center works because everyone here is committed to supporting our operators. Senior Chief Williams has created an environment where excellence is the standard, not the exception." Thompson nodded approvingly. "And that response, Petty Officer, tells me everything I need to know about your character." What happened next surprised everyone in the communications center, including Marcus. Admiral Thompson, a flag officer with over 3 decades of distinguished service, came to attention and rendered a slow, deliberate salute to Petty Officer Second Class Elena Vasquez. The gesture was completely unexpected and contrary to normal military protocol. Traditionally, junior personnel salute senior officers, not the other way around. For an admiral to salute an enlisted sailor was almost unprecedented, particularly in an informal setting. But, as Marcus watched, he understood that Thompson's salute was not about protocol or tradition. It was about recognition, respect, and acknowledgement of exceptional service that transcended rank or position. Elena, clearly stunned by the gesture, immediately returned the salute. But Marcus could see in her eyes that she understood the significance of what had just happened. Admiral Thompson was not saluting her rank or her position, he was saluting her dedication, her skill, and her embodiment of the values that made military service meaningful. The entire communications center had fallen silent. Every person in the room understood that they were witnessing something remarkable, a moment when the normal hierarchy of military service gave way to pure recognition of excellence and dedication. As the salutes were completed, Admiral Thompson spoke again, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet room. "Petty Officer Vasquez, your service honors not just your uniform, but everyone who wears it. Thank you for your dedication, your skill, and your commitment to bringing our people home safely." Elena's response was barely audible. "It's an honor to serve, sir." As Admiral Thompson and Marcus prepared to continue their tour, the Admiral turned back one last time. "Captain Rodriguez, I want a full briefing on Petty Officer Vasquez's career development options. Someone with her abilities and dedication should have every opportunity to grow and contribute at the highest levels, while still being able to do the work she clearly loves." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. As they left the communications center, Marcus could hear the quiet conversations beginning among the personnel who had witnessed the exchange. He knew that the story of Admiral Thompson's salute would spread throughout the command, and probably beyond, as an example of leadership and recognition that went beyond the ordinary. But, more importantly, Marcus knew that Elena had received something that no formal award or commendation could provide, the genuine respect and acknowledgement of a leader who understood the true value of her service. The ripples from this moment would extend far beyond that afternoon, affecting not only Elena's career but also serving as an example of what meaningful recognition looked like in the military community. The news of Admiral Thompson's salute traveled through the naval special warfare community with the speed and persistence of wildfire. Within hours, personnel at bases across the country were discussing the unprecedented moment when a flag officer had saluted an enlisted sailor in recognition of exceptional service. But the story grew in the telling, as stories often do. Some versions focused on the technical brilliance Elena had displayed during the fire support coordination. Others emphasized the Admiral's recognition of service that went beyond normal expectations. A few even suggested that the incident represented a new approach to military recognition and leadership. Elena found herself at the center of attention she had never sought and definitely didn't want. Officers from other commands began visiting the communications center, ostensibly for routine coordination meetings but clearly hoping to meet the petty officer who had earned such extraordinary recognition from Admiral Thompson. The attention made Elena increasingly uncomfortable. She began arriving early for her shifts and staying late, trying to minimize her interactions with visitors. She focused even more intensely on her work, as if perfect performance could somehow deflect the spotlight that had been trained on her. Marcus watched this development with growing concern. He had hoped that Admiral Thompson's recognition would validate Elena's contributions while respecting her preference for staying in the background. Instead, it seemed to have created exactly the kind of attention Elena had always tried to avoid. It was Master Chief Anderson who finally provided perspective on the situation during one of their weekly meetings. "Sir, you need to understand that what happened with Admiral Thompson was unprecedented in Elena's experience," Anderson said. "She spent 4 years building an identity around being competent but invisible. Suddenly, being the center of attention feels like everything she thought she understood about her role has changed." Marcus leaned back in his chair, thinking about the unintended consequences of what should have been a positive moment. "What do you recommend?" "Talk to her directly, sir. Help her understand that recognition doesn't have to change who she is or what she does. And, maybe more importantly, help her see that her example is actually inspiring other people to excel in their own roles." That evening, Marcus made his way to the communications center during Elena's shift. He found her at her usual station, but instead of the focused calm he had grown accustomed to seeing, there was tension in her posture that suggested she was struggling with more than just technical challenges. "Elena," Marcus said, pulling up a chair beside her station. how are you holding up?" She looked at him with an expression that mixed exhaustion with something that might have been relief at having someone ask the question directly. "Honestly, sir? I'm not sure I am holding up very well." Marcus waited for her to continue, understanding that sometimes the most helpful thing a leader could do was simply listen. "Ever since Admiral Thompson's visit, I feel like I'm living in someone else's life," Elena said. "People look at me differently now. They expect me to have answers about things I've never thought about. Some people act like I'm some kind of hero, and others seem to think I'm getting special treatment I don't deserve." She paused, her hands absently adjusting settings on equipment that didn't need adjustment. "I just want to do my job, sir. I want to be the person who makes sure the communications work when people need them to work. But now it feels like everyone is watching to see what I'll do next, like they expect something more than just being good at my job." Marcus had suspected this was how Elena was feeling, but hearing it confirmed helped him understand the delicate balance he needed to strike in addressing her concerns. "Elena, can I tell you something about leadership that I learned the hard way?" She nodded. "When I was a young officer, I thought leadership was about making all the right decisions and never showing uncertainty. I thought if people saw me struggle with anything, they'd lose confidence in my ability to command." Marcus smiled at the memory. "It took me years to understand that real leadership often means being willing to be seen struggling with difficult challenges. The people who serve with you don't expect perfection, they expect authenticity and commitment to doing what's right." Elena listened intently, and Marcus could see her processing what he was saying. What Admiral Thompson recognized in you wasn't perfection. It was authenticity. You were completely focused on supporting the people who needed your help, without any concern for how you looked doing it. That's what made the moment so powerful. "But now everyone expects me to be that person all the time," Elena said. "What if I make a mistake? What if I can't live up to what people think they saw?" "Elena, do you remember what you told me about your father?" "Which thing, sir?" "That every job in the military is important, but some jobs are about being the invisible support that allows others to shine. That there's honor in being the person no one notices when things go right, but everyone depends on when things go wrong." Elena nodded. "Your father's wisdom hasn't changed because Admiral Thompson saluted you. You're still the same person, doing the same important work, with the same understanding of what service means. The only difference is that now more people are aware of the value of what you do." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Elena, what if instead of seeing the attention as a burden, you saw it as an opportunity to help other people understand what excellence in military service looks like?" Elena was quiet for a moment, considering this perspective. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean, sir." "There are young sailors and petty officers throughout this command who are trying to figure out how to make a meaningful contribution to the mission. They see the operators who carry out the dramatic missions, and they see the officers who make the big decisions, but they don't always see examples of how to excel in supporting roles." Marcus gestured toward Elena's equipment. "Your example shows them that excellence isn't about the visibility of your role, it's about the depth of your commitment to doing that role better than anyone expects it can be done." For the first time in weeks, Elena seemed to relax slightly. "So you're saying that maybe the attention isn't really about me personally, but about what my work represents?" "Exactly. And, Elena, you don't have to change anything about how you approach your work. You just have to be willing to let other people learn from watching you do what you've always done." Their conversation was interrupted by an incoming transmission that required Elena's immediate attention. As Marcus watched her seamlessly transition into handling the communication requirements for a team requesting extraction support, he realized that she had already begun to understand what he was trying to tell her. Elena's movements were as confident and precise as ever. Her voice carried the same professional calm that had impressed Admiral Thompson. But there was something different in her demeanor, a sense that she was no longer trying to hide from the responsibility of being excellent. Over the following weeks, Marcus noticed a gradual change in Elena's approach to the attention she was receiving. Instead of avoiding interactions with visiting officers, she began engaging with them professionally, answering questions about communication procedures and sharing insights about operational support. She started participating more actively in shift briefings, offering suggestions based on her experience and helping less experienced operators understand the nuances of different communication scenarios. Her colleagues in the communications center began turning to her not just for technical expertise, but for guidance on how to approach their work with greater focus and professionalism. Most importantly, Elena seemed to have found a way to embrace recognition without losing sight of her core identity as someone who served others rather than seeking personal advancement. The transformation became most apparent during a training exercise that brought together personnel from several different special operations units. The exercise was designed to test communication procedures under challenging conditions, with teams operating in simulated hostile environments while coordinating complex multi-unit operations. Elena was assigned to serve as the primary communication coordinator for the exercise, a role that would require her to manage transmissions from 12 different teams while coordinating with air support, artillery units, and multiple command elements. Marcus observed the exercise from the command post, watching Elena orchestrate the complex communication requirements with a skill and confidence that impressed even the most experienced officers present. But what struck him most was how she had begun to use her role to elevate the performance of everyone around her. When less experienced operators struggled with communication procedures, Elena didn't simply take over their tasks. Instead, she provided guidance that helped them understand not just what to do, but why specific procedures were important. She shared insights about how different types of operations required different communication approaches, helping others develop the intuitive understanding that had always been her greatest strength. During one particularly challenging phase of the exercise, when multiple teams were requesting support simultaneously while dealing with simulated equipment failures, Elena demonstrated the kind of calm competence under pressure that had originally caught Admiral Thompson's attention. But, this time, she also provided a running commentary for the benefit of the other operators in the communications center, explaining her decision-making process and helping them understand how to prioritize competing demands when everything seemed urgent. The key, she explained during a brief lull in activity, is remembering that our job isn't just to handle communications. It's to be the reliable connection that allows everyone else to focus on their missions without worrying about whether they'll be able to get the support they need. After the exercise concluded, the commanding officer of one of the visiting units approached Marcus with a request that would have seemed impossible just a few months earlier. "Captain Rodriguez, I wonder if we could arrange for Petty Officer Vasquez to visit our unit for a few days to review our communication procedures. My operators could benefit from learning how she approaches coordination challenges." Similar requests began arriving from other commands throughout the special operations community. Word of Elena's expertise had spread, and units wanted access to her insights about improving their communication capabilities. Marcus realized that Elena had found a way to share her knowledge and skills without abandoning her core role. She had become what the military called a subject matter expert, someone whose expertise was valued across the broader community while still maintaining her primary responsibilities. But the most meaningful recognition of Elena's growth came from an unexpected source. Marcus was working late in his office when Senior Chief Williams knocked on his door. "Sir, do you have a minute? There's something I think you should see." Williams led Marcus to the communications center, where Elena was working her regular night shift. But tonight was different. 3 junior petty officers were gathered around her station, listening intently as she explained how to recognize subtle signal variations that might indicate equipment problems or communication security concerns. "The important thing to remember," Elena was saying, "is that you're not just monitoring communications. You're watching for anything that might affect the safety and success of the people depending on you. That means paying attention to things that seem minor, because sometimes minor problems become major emergencies if no one notices them early enough." One of the junior operators asked a question about frequency management, and Elena responded with the kind of detailed explanation that revealed her deep understanding of both the technical and practical aspects of her work. As Marcus watched, he realized that Elena had become exactly what her father had described, the invisible support that allowed others to shine. But now she was also helping others understand how to provide that same level of support. "She's been doing this for about a month now," Williams explained quietly. "Comes in early or stays late to work with junior personnel. Doesn't make a big deal about it, just shares what she knows with anyone who's interested in learning. Marcus felt a profound sense of satisfaction as he watched Elena teach the next generation of communication specialists. She had found a way to honor Admiral Thompson's recognition while staying true to her own understanding of service. A few weeks later, Marcus received notification that Elena had been selected for promotion to Petty Officer First Class. The promotion was based not just on her technical excellence, but on her growing role as a mentor and subject matter expert within the special operations community. When Marcus informed Elena of her promotion, her response reflected how much she had grown since Admiral Thompson's visit. "Thank you, sir. I hope this means I'll be able to help even more people understand what it means to provide reliable support when it really matters." As Marcus reflected on Elena's journey from a competent but reluctant specialist to a recognized expert and mentor, he realized that Admiral Thompson's salute had accomplished something more significant than simple recognition. It had helped Elena understand that excellence in service wasn't something to hide from, but something to embrace and share with others. The final lesson came months later, when Marcus received word that Elena had been selected to serve as the senior communications specialist for a new Joint Special Operations Task Force. The assignment would involve coordinating communication support for some of the military's most challenging missions, working with the most elite units in the special operations community. Elena's response to the assignment reflected the confidence and sense of purpose she had developed over the previous year. "Sir, I understand the responsibility that comes with this assignment. I'll make sure that every operator who depends on our communications knows they can count on reliable support, no matter how challenging the situation becomes." As Marcus watched Elena prepare for her new assignment, he thought about the nature of leadership and recognition in military service. Admiral Thompson's salute had not been about elevating Elena above her peers or changing her fundamental role. It had been about acknowledging excellence and encouraging Elena to embrace the responsibility that came with exceptional ability. The story of Elena Vesquez became part of the culture of naval special warfare, told not as an example of individual heroism, but as a demonstration of what happened when natural talent, dedicated training, and genuine commitment to service came together in a single person. More importantly, it became an example of how meaningful recognition could inspire someone not just to continue excelling, but to help others understand what excellence looked like in their own roles. Elena's father had been right about the honor of being the invisible support that allowed others to shine. But Admiral Thompson's salute had helped Elena understand that sometimes the most invisible support became most valuable when it was shared with others who were learning to provide the same level of dedication and competence. In the end, the story was not really about a single moment when a flag officer saluted an enlisted sailor. It was about the understanding that excellence in military service came in many forms, and that recognizing and nurturing that excellence was one of the most important responsibilities of military leadership. Elena continued to serve with the same quiet competence that had originally drawn attention to her work. But now she did so with the confidence that came from understanding her value to the mission and her responsibility to help others develop the same level of excellence. The radio continued to crackle with transmissions from teams around the world, and Elena continued to ensure that those transmissions were clear, reliable, and properly coordinated. But now there were others who understood not just how to operate the equipment, but how to approach the work with the depth of commitment that made the difference between adequate performance and life-saving excellence. That, Marcus realized, was what Admiral Thompson had really been saluting, not just exceptional individual performance, but the willingness to help others understand what exceptional performance looked like.